there's about 20 touch points a brand needs to have with the consumer before they buy. And some of those touch points start on TikTok and then they end on Amazon or where the conversion happens. And so just this ability, so like retail media and like commerce media, I guess, if you want to call it, has expanded from this touch point phase. And so if you think about that nonlinear path of how people are discovering to buying products, that's kind of like now the ecosystem that we're dealing with, that we're able to kind of identify, activate, and measure within this ecosystem that we're working within.
Welcome to Unlocking Retail Media, the podcast where we explore the evolving world of retail media from data strategy to monetization and everything in between. This is where we break down how retailers can build smarter, data-driven media networks by aligning with what brands truly need, from scalable ad solutions and meaningful metrics to cross-channel attribution and programmatic strategy. Welcome to Unlocking Retail Media. Today I'm excited for a conversation about where commerce media is headed and what it takes to build it in the right way. My guest is Melissa Burdick, co-founder and president of Pacvue. Melissa is one of the true builders in this space. She spent 10 years at Amazon helping launch major parts of the CPG business and was there as Amazon advertising started to take shape. Now at Pacvue, she's helping shape how brands and retailers actually win in commerce media. Today, we're going to dig into some of the biggest themes of the year ahead, including incrementality, the 3 pillars of commerce media, and what brands and retailers need to get right as the space matures. Melissa, thanks so much for doing this. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, ditto. Thanks for having me.
So before we kind of jump into some of the topics, I thought it'd be great to kind of do a little bit of the background, the history of like Pacvue. So, kind of starting from the beginning, like you were at Amazon for, a decade, right? Like in the early days of like the beginning of retail media, really.
Yeah. So yeah, I spent 10 years at Amazon. I helped launch the consumables business in 2005, when you actually had to turn your name badge around backwards at trade shows because nobody actually wanted to be on Amazon. So that was a long time ago. And then I also was kind of early in the pioneering stage of creating ads on Amazon. So I got I like to call Amazon the cheapest MBA I didn't have to pay for, because it was I learned so much. But I left Amazon, and on September 29th, I remember it really well because that was my birthday, 2017, I got the API from Amazon in the advertising, their Amazon advertising API. And they had just started this kind of, partner network thing. Nobody had the API. It was literally just, I would call it like, as part of the Amazon mafia, like having the network of all the people that I used to work with. They knew me. And so they asked if I wanted it. And I said yes. And I met my partner, Jiawei. He had worked with my husband for 10 years at Microsoft. They had built Microsoft Ad Center. And my husband started tinkering around with this API for me as I was trying to figure out how can I use this to help brands. And he invited Jiawei over for dinner, thinking that he and Jiawei would build this company together. And by the end of that dinner, Jiawei and I had decided that we were going to build Pacvue. And my husband decided that he'd have to go back to corporate while I do the startup. And he bought himself a boat and called it Corporate Consolation Prize. So
I like it.
That's the story. That's the real story.
I love it. That's a great founding story. So maybe give people a quick overview of where Pacvue sits. So we know it's based on, Amazon APIs as well as a lot of other APIs now. Yeah. But what's the kind of elevator pitch for Pacvue to brands?
So I'd say we've scaled significantly and we've added lots. I mean, we sit on over 100 retailers at this point. So we started with Amazon, we started with one market and expanded globally, expanded retailers. But I would call us an AI powered commerce system that helps brands and agencies manage, optimize, measure, and grow their business across all these retailers. So that's, we started just kind of in this one space of Amazon. But then, as you know, in 2020 or whenever, COVID hit, everything moved to retail media networks. And there's this huge explosion. And we started working with Walmart and Alpha, Instacart in early stages. So like everyone was coming to Pacvue we were helping drive the demand and helping really kind of build APIs with them, given our expertise in the area. So that's kind of where we're at today. And now we have a huge amount of enterprise brands and agencies that we work with to help accelerate them.
Awesome. Yeah, I always think of it as, I think one of the trends or one of the things people keep talking about in the industry is the proliferation of retail media networks. And it's like getting so, there's getting to be so many new ones all the time. But that's kind of a good thing for Pacvue. And really, you guys kind of cut through that for the brand. So it doesn't matter if there's another 10, in the next 6 months, because if they can buy and manage and get reporting all through a single interface, it doesn't really matter if there's another 10 or 20, right?
Right. I mean, we're basically unifying all the fragmentation. Nobody wants to log into 5, even 10, even 20 retailers and have UIs that they're trying to operate across. So we're basically kind of like the single pane of glass that's across all these retailers that helps enable people to just kind of scale their retail media across all of them with some consistency. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's great that for today, like it's like you get to bring a perspective that's really interesting for like, most of the people listening to this, I think, are running a retail media network, and they're thinking about, one, what should I be exposing? What should I be building? What are the, interesting new, things I should enable? But also I think you have that brand perspective, because at the end of the day, that's the kind of customer you're working with, is that brand who is looking to, spend on different retail media networks.
Yeah. Well, we consider ourselves like a really good partner for the retailers. So where our customers really, retailers and brands and agencies, because we're trying to help the retailers. Usually the retailers are coming to us as they think about even creating retail media networks, because they're like, who should we work with? What tech stack should we have? Can you help us with feedback on our APIs? Things like that, because we've been doing it for so long. So really involved in the process with them.
That's awesome. And so thinking from the brand side, what does retail media actually feel like right now? Like, is it, are brands still excited about it? Do they feel like it's, frustrating and messy? What's the sentiment you hear from that side?
I think that, so if you go back maybe 2 or 3 years, it was kind of like a non-negotiable. It's like, you will be on retail media. Retail media is the big thing. And so everyone's kind of rushing into the retail media space. Then there is this like kind of, roadrunner, like kind of, backing up the feet a little bit of like, whoa, is this incremental? Are we just shifting budgets and products from one retailer to another retailer? It's really difficult, because when you're in a silo and you're looking at one retailer and another retailer, their ROAS metrics are their own. It's like within that retailer metric. So your ROAS may look amazing, but actually it's not really incremental. So we like to look at iROAS metrics, and really this ROAS kind of number is a little bit, I wouldn't call it fake news, but it's just not as helpful to understand a holistic picture when you're looking across your full portfolio. So I'd say for brands, they're optimistic about retail media, and that it's very measurable. It gives them really great metrics and KPIs immediately, which is a lot better than some other things where they can actually tie it to sales. But I'd say that there's a little bit more of a big eyeglass that they're using now to say, is this incremental? Is it driving results for my business? Am I getting the best bang for the buck out of it? How can I be efficient and effective with my dollars?
Yeah, so they're getting a little more careful with how they're spending, or a little more results oriented, right? Instead of just throw some budget into retail media, it's actually show me that this is working. Like prove that there's value in the dollars I'm spending.
Exactly. Yeah.
And do you think that's like a change? Because we still, there's a number of retailers we still talk to where, they're kind of still getting like trade dollars, but they want to get the performance dollars.
Yeah.
And do you think that's the same shift that has to happen, right? To kind of unlock the performance budgets from just the, kind of trade dollars they're kind of guaranteed?
Well, that's why the big word is full funnel campaigns that everyone's going towards, is because, when you have just sponsored products and it's a little bit more tied to a sale, but the minute you can get into more brand budgets with like streaming TV ads, then you can really get into some performance budgets. So I'd say like the big push is full funnel campaigns. If you hear that kind of messaging, it's because the more you can get on-site, off-site dollars, the more you can get into upper funnel budgets. And so that's the name of the game, is how do you increase kind of the offerings that each of these retailers have. That's why there's a lot of partnerships with Trade Desk, trying to get into more of the budgets that are brand budgets, because those are huge, DSP big dollars that they can get into.
Yeah, I think it leads into, I think I teased this in the intro, but really the kind of three pillars of commerce media.
Mm-hmm.
How you think about, what are those three pillars? How do you think about, how brands and retailers should both be thinking about that?
So I've had this concept of the three pillars, and kind of why they each have different playbooks. So one is discovery commerce, and that's kind of like the TikTok, Instagram, kind of like, where are people going to discover and find brands? So a lot of people are going to TikTok, and the type of content that you need on TikTok is like upper funnel, more kind of higher level content, influencer marketing, using influencers. The next pillar is retail media. So that's the, hundreds of retailers where you can have sponsored products, you can, buy into their networks. And then the last pillar is our newest one this year. If you were at CES, you heard this word all the time, but agentic commerce. And that's the trend. I think that we know the least about this, and the model continues to change, but that's where people are going to ChatGPT and LLMs to ask, what should I be buying? So each of those pillars each have different playbooks. The last one is the biggest experimentation one, because really it's, as we speak, it's kind of like what retail media was when it first started. Now it's like this phase of agentic commerce that's starting to play out.
And how do you think, because like we talk about agentic a lot, and I think, we're all kind of, watching what's going on, and there's new announcements every day. I kind of go back and forth on how big do I think it'll actually be? Like, will people really be, telling ChatGPT to buy them something, right? Will they be, I think obviously everybody's using it for research. How do you think about it from like a retailer perspective? If I'm a retailer and I'm like, I have all, they probably have a list of 20 things to do, right? Like all the different things they're trying to catch up on, how should they prioritize agentic, when they think about the whole stack?
I think that agentic is an area you have to experiment and understand. I actually really like Walmart's approach to the market, where, and I don't know if this is Jason Goldberg's NRF presentation that I just found fascinating. And when he presented, he said, 2 years ago, they were in an executive meeting and they're asking the CEO, the CEO is asking his executive team, how did you prepare for this meeting using AI? And the team was like, well, AI is banned at Walmart. And so that was 2 years ago. And so that they fixed that, and they let, every associate has access to AI tools. They created internally, like Marty, Sparky. They're experimenting with they were one of the first ones to announce a relationship with ChatGPT. So they're out there really trying to figure it out and experiment. And it's kind of like in that early stages of the, cycle where it's not really in use yet, but they're figuring it out. And so that's where we're with ChatGPT. It's like, if you're not experimenting and like creating the relationships and understanding how it's working, like the model where it's at today, it's going to be so advanced in a year from now. Like it's going to be, and if you're not starting to experiment and understanding it today, then you're going to be definitely left behind. One of the LLMs do you work with do you use Rufus a lot on Amazon?
I've tried it. Yeah. Like the price history thing was fascinating. Like that they recently launched with that. Yeah.
I mean, it really, I use it so much now. At first, people are like, oh, nobody's using Rufus, but like I needed to buy an adapter for my electric car that works with the Tesla adapter and like all this like complicated stuff. And I asked Rufus, I was like, give me the Tesla give me the adapter that works with my BMW car that works, and it gave me what I needed. Like that would have been, I would have had to like read a product detail page and like try to figure out, does this work with my car? But I asked Rufus, and it like literally gave me the right ASIN that I needed. So that was super helpful to me. And like, I'm starting to use it more, and I find it a great assistant. So like that, I would encourage people to start using Rufus on Amazon and see if it helps you with your life, because I could see ChatGPT morphing. I mean, the ChatGPT it's experimenting with models. I love how a year ago they said, we'll never be in ads. And then now they've announced that we're in ads.
Everything comes back to ads eventually. We were all watching that announcement and laughing because we were like, we knew ads were going to come.
Yep. You and I are in the right business, but
Yeah.
at first we were like, oh, I wonder if it is going to come, but yep, here it is a year later. But I would really start experimenting with these platforms because, like I said, if you're not experimenting and kind of seeing where the puck is going, then you're going to be left in the cold.
Yeah, we've started. I can't name the retailer, but we were talking to a kind of CPG retailer who had launched their own kind of Rufus equivalent, and they already saw where it was increasing basket sizes by 20%.
Exactly.
Like people that used it, it was like you were getting recommendations, you were getting additional recommendations, you were getting, ideas of other things you should add, and just a straight 20% basket size increase. Like that's that's incredible, especially for a CPG type like retailer.
Yeah. And it's the consumer behavior is interesting. Do you kids? I forget. Do you have?
Yeah, yeah, yep.
I have two teenage kids and they are like I mean, a new TikTok shop or a new Amazon box is showing up at my door every day. And their consumer behavior, like some of the brands I've never heard of before. So they're discovering it in one place, buying another, using Rufus. I mean, so like if you look at the consumer behavior of our next generation, they're using all these native tools like it's, easy.
Yeah, I have to watch TikTok to understand what my kids are talking about. So I
Yeah.
also have two teenagers, so it's like a chore where I'm like, okay, fine, I have to understand what are these trends now that we're going to be talking about at the dinner table. But yeah, I agree with you. It's like it's not always Amazon boxes showing up, right? Like there's boxes, direct to consumer brands that I'd never heard of that they're ordering from. So 100% like see the same thing, and I like how that ties back to like the three pillars, right? Of like how are you getting in that discovery phase, and and I think we've always known retail media is closer to the transaction, right?
Yeah, another thing that occurred to me that I think is really helpful to think about. I was in a presentation, and whether this is right or wrong, I don't know. The concept I think is helpful, but there was this saying that there's about 20 touch points a brand needs to have with the consumer before they buy. And some of those touch points start on TikTok and then they end on Amazon or where the conversion happens. And so just this ability, so like retail media and like commerce media, I guess, if you want to call it, has expanded from this touch point phase. And so if you think about that nonlinear path of how people are discovering to buying products, that's kind of like now the ecosystem that we're dealing with, that we're able to kind of identify, activate, and measure within this ecosystem that we're working within.
Yeah, and I think it's the same. Like I think you could also put in the discovery, like all the work going on in CTV, right? Like the retailers who are working on how do we target on CTV and then track them, and then when they show up on the site, we're targeting them on the site, and then you're getting them all the way through conversion, like 100%.
Exactly, and that's why CTV, it's pretty cool what Amazon's done to democratize the space and be able to like just buy without having to have big dollars into it. But that's one more of the touch points, is this ability to attract and find customers in, cross streaming TV, which is where most people are watching TV these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So we should talk about what makes all this possible, which I know is also like, I think it's something Pacvue and Kevel have in common, which is thinking about APIs.
Yeah. We are, I think my big phrase that I say to every retailer is, and I even have a sticker made up, API first. And when I thought about the sticker, actually, I thought I'm going to have this sticker. I'm going to put it on my computer, and then I'm going to open my computer when I have meetings with the retailers, and they're going to see it the whole time. And then I was like, actually, it's pretty rude to have your computer open. So that doesn't work, but it does work to hand my API first stickers out. But it's really what unlocks the ability to be, fast, flexible, and be able to scale. It's so critical that it is API first. And I understand from a retailer perspective, sometimes it's hard because you want to, operate in the UI and then make sure it works and then push it into the API. But what's challenging about that is, especially for a platform like Pacvue, is that we're working with all the brands and agencies. And so they don't get access to the cool new stuff first if it's not pushed into the API. And so that's the only way that they'll be able to access it, is if it's in the API for them to scale.
Yeah, it's one of the things we've always been a big proponent of this, and maybe because like that's how we build as well. Like we'll launch something in our API before it's available in the UI, And to us, it's like a requirement of how we do development. We're like, we're not gonna put something in the UI that's, not available through the API. But I 100% agree when, all the things we've talked about where, there's so many retail media networks now. There's brands are overwhelmed by the number of retail media networks. If you launch something just in your UI, if that customer is using Pacvue, they're not going to use it. Like it's not available to them.
Yeah.
So where do you see that? Where do you see that the kind of really play today? Like where are things kind of too UI driven still and not enough API exposure?
I think measurement is one of those areas that is hard. Amazon has the gold standard of having Amazon Marketing Cloud, where they've really made their data available in a scalable way. But that's, we have about 100, I think, variables that we always ask retailers for when we launch, and we get, it depends on who the retailer is. Maybe we'll get 10%, 20%, 50% of the variables that we ask for. But I think the measurement piece, which is really the critical part of, especially with brands wanting to understand how well is a retail media performing. And the more signals that we can push in to our algorithms helps, this ecosystem be better. So that's kind of what I would say.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of like in my mind, it always goes back to, all the retailers are looking to drive spend. Mm-hmm. Pacvue works with, most of the largest brands in the world. If you're not exposing through the APIs to Pacvue, how are you expecting the brands to spend, right? It feels like a very direct ROI for the retailers, right? If you expose more, you're probably going to get more spend, right?
100%. Yeah. And it also just doesn't break things. Like that's another challenge we have is when you have some manual things that you have to also address. We have a lot of times where the problem will actually be on the retailer side, but the brand and agency might blame Pacvue because we're the interface. And so that's also a big unhappy challenge for us is just always, and because it's always so new, it's sometimes an unknown. But all I can say is API is the way that we scale. The fact that you build API first is amazing. That's such a feather in the cap for you guys and very helpful for the ecosystem.
Yeah, I'll put an API sticker on my laptop. Yeah. Or maybe I should put it on my binder. I can put it on my notepad that I use in meetings or something somewhere. So you're right. I don't have the laptop open.
You can put it on your phone. You can put it on the back of your phone.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. We got we're looking at Kevel cases. Maybe we'll get Kevel Pacvue API first cases. So thinking about this is I guess maybe almost more like shop talk between two people in the industry. I'm really curious how you think about the power users and I think we build. I know Pacvue has a lot of power user kind of settings and for the really really good brands. Then how do you think about that when it comes to simplicity as well?
Yeah.
So I think retailers kind of have the same struggle of okay, do we build a super simple self-serve or do we focus more on the APIs and those feeding the Pacvue, or how do you think about those different types of brands, right? That are looking for the more comprehensive power user experience versus maybe a mid-market brand that just wants something simple.
I think that's the beauty of our platform because we've basically built for all the scenarios. So if you're someone that I'll have a car analogy. My first car was a stick shift. That's how old I am. But I don't think they even make those kind of cars anymore, maybe in Europe. But, if you want a stick shift, if you want to have tons of control, we have a bunch of rule-based bidding and this ability to be very custom. If you want to deep dive and do things like that, you can do that. If you want the Tesla autopilot, my husband just lets the Tesla autopilot drive for itself, you can do that. So we have kind of the every kind of way that a brand may want to work with us from very specific that takes a little bit more expertise. Actually it's harder to be, the stick shift. You actually have to have more time invested in understanding how to do it. Or if you just want to be easy and be here's my goal, just achieve that goal for me. We have that. And the other things, I'll give an example about how we're simplifying things for people and I have a lot of Amazon examples, so apologies, but that's where I'm they have the most robust and mature platform that's easiest to speak to in some cases. But when they launched Amazon Marketing Cloud, you basically had to create SQL to use it. Like that was, if you weren't able to write code, you basically couldn't get access to it. And so what we did at Pacvue was we created a bunch of templates that was like, here's a template for this to create an audience for new to brand customers. So you didn't have to write SQL. You could just use a template. And so that's some of the ways that we were simplifying. And one of the ways that we like to talk about it is we're able to take the innovation from the retailers and scale it using our technology and our platform for brands and agencies to take advantage of. So that's, if we're trying to simplify workflows, like we have a bunch of workflows that blow out multiple campaigns that you can create based on a naming convention. So you can start with like, here's an idea, now make it happen 50 times in an automated way. So there's a lot of like functionality, and the fact that we understand the most mature retailer helps us with everybody else, because we can then bring all that technology and functionality to everybody as well.
Yeah, I still think every retailer is basically still chasing Amazon on the sophistication of their RMN. And I don't think a lot of them are close, but some of them are working hard. But like, that's our mission is like, how can we help retailers build RMNs as good as Amazon's? I don't think we're there yet. Like there's always something new that you're chasing. But I think it's great for all retailers should all be looking at Amazon and saying, this is what a fully scaled, fully optimized RMN looks like. And it keeps changing every year, right? They keep announcing the new, we were talking about before this, like some of the, there's always new exciting stuff coming out of Amazon that retailers need to they pay attention to every one of them.
I mean, in some ways, it's kind of like the big brands come out with some big new functionality or brand, and then the copycats come along and they create that brand. And it's like they did way less work in research, and they did way less work, and they are able to create a cool brand. So in some ways, it's nice to have a playbook and a blueprint to aspire to that helps you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into, we're kind of jumping around. Brands are getting more serious about incrementality. A lot of them are still pretty early on in separating kind of real lift from like baseline demand. Like how should a brand be really thinking about, effectively measuring incrementality?
Incrementality is a complicated subject, and I think it's often misunderstood. And sometimes it's a vanity metric where it's kind of not exactly what they're trying to. Measuring it is hard. It requires some very custom models, but we're getting better at it because brands are getting more comfortable breaking down the data silos that allows for the cross-channel and full funnel tracking. And sometimes the brands or the, retailers aren't set up to be able to even give the data that you need to do this. But I think that we're in a state where it's finally becoming more available. So that's the good news. And then when you combine the advancements with machine learning that we have, that kind of is enabling all of us to be faster, to put the inputs in that we're getting more access to, and the output using kind of latest technology to be able to crunch all the data and come back with an incrementality model that's actually pretty good.
And where did clean rooms fit in?
So when I asked at CES, I asked, what's 2026 the year of? And one of the retailers said to me, it's the year of the data clean room and test and learn. So I do think we're going to hear a lot about that. But, they provide a privacy safe collaboration. Sometimes they're oversold because, it's very powerful because the data is there, but it's not all the measurement models that's available. So that it still takes like, the right technology and intelligence to draw out all the insights. But I think that if we look at some of the things that Amazon Marketing Cloud enables us, it gives us access to tons and tons of data and the ability to create new metrics, new models based off of it. So that's one of the areas that we're working on multiple retailers with, is being able to provide more of that back to brands.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think that dovetails into, I think where we'll kind of wrap things up is thinking about, the retailers listening to this. Mm-hmm. You work with all these brands, you work with so many retailers, a lot of spend goes through Pacvue. Yeah, what's your kind of advice if you're advising a retailer who's, launching a new network or just starting to scale a network, what's the first thing they should be focused on?
Well, I'll bring my sticker out, which is
Perfect.
this API first sticker. And not to be self-serving in this, but I do think that retailers should reach out to the experts in the space and interview them. Like before they start a retail media network, they should talk to you. They should talk to Pacvue. They should understand like the people that are building and doing these things can really be a steroid shot in the arm to help them understand what are the right tech partners I should be working with. What are the watch outs? How can I build this effectively? Even in a co-building kind of situation where it's like, that's how we work with a lot of retailers is we're giving them, we find a lot of the bugs. So that's why I know that we're like one of the first ones working on their platforms because we're finding all the bugs. Uh,
Yeah.
but we're really helping them kind of build together and I really think it takes a village to do commerce. And so really having especially when they're first starting, having a partner first mentality is going to accelerate them. And then later on, they can, figure out like maybe they can bring more things in house. But the best way to get started is to start with the partners that are the experts to really accelerate them.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then what do you think retailers, are underestimating about it, right? Because we talk to a lot of retailers that are, just getting started or, they've heard all this money sloshing around in retail media and they want to get their piece of it. Like what do you think they kind of underestimate about building an RMN?
I think a lot of times, one of the biggest things is if you build it, they will come. And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges. People think, oh, okay, it's here. Now where's all my demand? Where's all my sales? And it actually takes a lot of time. Like budgets are tied up. They don't have budgets to even use yet. So it's the length of time something takes and this concept that there's just going to be this day one turn on of like, okay, now I built it. Where's all the brands? Like it actually takes a lot of work to bring that demand to the table. Um, so
Yeah, it doesn't help that there's well-known consultancies out there telling retailers they can, get to $100 million run rate in 3 years with very little investment. So there's a lot of times there's some inflated expectations going into it.
I definitely think so.
And what do you think about, what does kind of winning look like, right? If you're starting a new retail media network, you're kind of 3 years in, what does it look like to be successful?
I think that success is defined by having a very stable, scalable, flexible system that is open with integrating a lot of the data signals like available of inventory, promotions, coupons, tying kind of like the more e-commerce components to advertising so that can feed and help have better advertising outcomes. Uh, and that if you do those things, you will have a very successful platform versus kind of building in a silo. Retail media networks kind of they launch in a silo and they don't take into account any of the sales inventory, like the e-commerce components of the business. And so being able to launch, having kind of that built into their system and having a little bit more of that democratized. Look at what Amazon's doing in terms of how they've built and having that aspiration would be pretty good.
Yeah, this has been great. So to close out, like what are you most excited about over the next couple of years, like in commerce media?
Honestly, I'm just excited to see the next wave of model with agentic commerce. So this, where is that going? Honestly, it's going to make people's lives so much easier to be able to go to some kind of, personalized agent that knows your size, your shape, what you like, and make recommendations of products that you can buy. And then what the advertising is going to be integrated into it, I think that
Yeah.
there's some pretty streamlined, cool things that are going to happen. And then this ability to, if it was 20 touch points before to buy a brand, it's being able to consolidate that to 3 and have this like really efficient and effective way for brands to find their customers and to convert them is going to be a really cool thing to watch.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's gonna be exciting to see. It's really a new shopping experience.
That's right.
And the last one was probably, e-commerce 20 years ago. So we get to be here for another one,
Yeah.
which I think is going to be exciting to see how it develops.
We're going to watch our teenagers teach us how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Even though I'm still threatening to make my kids learn how to drive a stick shift, because my sister has a stick shift. It's like an old car, but I'm like, you got to know how to do this. One day you're going to drive a moving van, or you're going to go to Spain for the summer, and you're going to want to do this. So we'll see. I'll let you know if I'm successful in this mission of mine.
Aren't we going the other direction where everything's going to be automated and there's actually not going to be a car is going to actually drive you automated?
Well, I remember I told somebody, I was at like a dinner party like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and I was like, my kids are never going to have to learn how to drive. Yeah. I was like, it's just going to be, everything's going to be self-driving. Well, now they're both learning how to drive. Well, one has their license and the other is learning how to drive now. So I think it's taking longer than I expected. So maybe I'll go retro on them and make them learn the stick shift.
There you go. All right. Well, I'm sure if they get a car, then they'll do anything for it. So
yeah, that's true. That's the way to do it. I'll only get them a stick shift, so then they have to learn.
Sounds good.
Awesome. This has been great. Thank you so much for joining. And obviously, I think people can find you on LinkedIn or reach out. And we're excited about everything Pacvue is doing in the industry. So excited to keep in touch. Thanks for tuning in to Unlocking Retail Media. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share this show with your network. We'll be back soon with more insights to help you navigate the future of retail media. See you next time.